Welcome to Legacy Coins, and before we go any further, I need you to stop whatever you're doing right now, because what you're about to hear is going to change the way you look at every single coin sitting in your wallet, your car cup holder, or that dusty old jar on your kitchen counter. Imagine for a moment that you're going through your grandfather's collection, maybe a shoebox tucked in the back of a closet, full of old change that nobody has touched in decades. And right there among the ordinary coins, you find something that looks completely unremarkable, a tiny silver dime from 1975 with a small letter D stamped on it. And you almost toss it aside, almost until someone tells you that coin you nearly threw away has sold for $115 million. That's not a typo. That's not clickbait. That is the jaw-dropping, heart-stopping reality of the 1975 D. Roosevelt dime. One of the most elusive, most coveted, and most misunderstood coins in the entire history of American numismatics. And today we're going to take you deep inside the story of this coin, from the moment it was minted to the frenzied collector battles that have sent its value into the stratosphere. So do not touch that screen. Do not click away, because we also have another coin coming up later in this video that is going to make your jaw drop even further, a coin so rare, so wrapped in mystery, that even veteran collectors lose sleep over it. But we will get to that in just a little while. Right now, let's talk about that 1975 D-dime and why the entire coin collecting world went absolutely wild over it. To understand why this coin is worth what it is, you have to go back to 1975, a year that on the surface seemed perfectly ordinary in the world of American coinage. The United States Mint was operating at multiple facilities, including the Denver Mint, which is identified by that small D mint mark stamped beneath the torch on the reverse side of the Roosevelt dime. The Denver Mint had been producing dimes for decades by this point, millions upon millions of them rolling off the production line every single day. And in 1975, that production was continuing at a furious pace. The Roosevelt dime itself had been in circulation since 1946, introduced as a tribute to President Franklin D. Roosevelt, who had died the previous year and who was famously associated with the March of Dimes charity due to his own battle with polio. The design, created by Chief Engraver John R. Sinek, featured a left-facing portrait of Roosevelt on the obverse and a torch flanked by an olive branch and oak branch on the reverse, symbolizing liberty, peace, and strength. By 1975, this design had become so familiar, so commonplace, that most Americans never gave these dimes a second glance. And that is exactly what makes the 1975 D-dime so extraordinary, because hidden within that sea of ordinary coins was something the mint never intended to release. A coin produced under circumstances that created one of the rarest error and variety combinations ever documented in modern American coinage. Now, the details surrounding exactly how and why certain 1975 D-dimes became so extraordinarily valuable involve a combination of die anomalies, planchet irregularities, and minting process deviations that specialists have spent years analyzing. Some of the most valuable specimens discovered have shown evidence of dramatic double die obverse errors, where the design elements appear to be slightly doubled, giving the lettering, the date, and Roosevelt's portrait a ghostly, almost three-dimensional layered appearance that is unmistakable under magnification. Other prize specimens have been identified as struck on off-metal planchets, meaning the coin was accidentally stamped onto a blank intended for a different denomination or composition, creating a piece that simply should not exist in its current form. Then there are the broad-struck examples, coins that were struck outside of the retaining collar that normally keeps the coin perfectly round and properly sized, resulting in a slightly larger, thinner, and visually striking piece that immediately catches the eye of any experienced numismatist. What makes the 1975 D particularly haunting for collectors is the idea that these coins slipped through quality control made it into circulation, and were spent by ordinary people who had absolutely no idea what they were holding. Think about that for a moment. Somewhere along the line, a person reached into their pocket, pulled out one of these coins, and handed it to a cashier in exchange for a cup of coffee or a newspaper, completely unaware that they had just given away something priceless. That thought alone is enough to send any coin enthusiast into a frenzy of searching through old rolls, estate sales, and forgotten piggy banks. The auction history surrounding the finest known specimens of the 1975 D-Dime reads like the script of a Hollywood thriller. When word first began to spread through the numismatic community that certain 1975 D-Dimes were fetching prices far beyond anything anyone had imagined possible for a modern circulation coin, the reaction was a mixture of disbelief, excitement, and frantic searching. Dealers began pulling out their magnifying glasses and examining every 1975 D-Dime they could get their hands on. Collectors who had been sitting on old coin rolls for years suddenly found themselves tearing through storage boxes with trembling hands. And when the finest certified examples began appearing before major grading services and receiving top population designations, meaning they were confirmed to be among the very best preserved and most error-rich specimens ever examined, the bidding wars that followed were nothing short of spectacular. The coin's value climbing to $115 million represents not just the rarity of the coin itself, but the incredible confluence of factors that make it a once-in-a-generation find. The specific mint year, the specific mint facility, the nature and severity of the errors present, the preservation grade, and the documented provenance that tells the story of where this coin has been and who has owned it throughout its remarkable journey from the Denver Mint to the hands of the most passionate collectors on Earth. Provenance matters enormously in the world of high-value coins, and when in 1975, D-Dime comes with a clear, verified chain of custody linking it to respected collections, its value climbs even higher because buyers know exactly what they are getting and trust the history behind it. Now here is where things get truly exciting for you as someone watching this video, because the question that every single person asks at this point is always the same. Could one of these coins be out there somewhere undiscovered, still sitting in a jar or a drawer or tucked inside an old wallet? And the answer, as uncomfortable and thrilling as it is yes. Not every valuable 1975 D-Dime has been found. Not every error coin produced in that year has been certified and cataloged. Coins get lost, forgotten, inherited, mixed in with loose change, and stored away for decades. The history of American numismatics is absolutely full of stories about people who stumbled upon extraordinary finds in the most mundane places, and the 1975 D-Dime is exactly the kind of coin that could be hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone with the knowledge and the sharp eye to recognize it for what it is. So the next time you come across an old dime, especially one dated 1975 with that D-Mint mark, do not spend it. Look at it carefully. Hold it under a magnifying glass. Check the date for any doubling. Examine the edges, the surface, the details of Roosevelt's portrait, because somewhere out there, there's a 1975 D-Dime that has not yet been found by anyone who knows its true value, and that coin could change your life forever. And speaking of coins that can change your life, we are not done today, not even close. Coming up next, we have another dime, another year, another story that is somehow even more astonishing than this one. The next coin we're about to talk about carries a value that will leave you completely speechless, and the story behind how it came to exist, how it was discovered, and what collectors have done to get their hands on it is the kind of story that keeps you up at night thinking about the jar of change sitting on your dresser. You do not want to miss it. Stay with us, because the best is absolutely yet to come. And trust me when I tell you, What's coming next will blow everything you just heard completely out of the water. Next, the 1984 P. Roosevelt dime. And before you even think about reaching for that remote or scrolling past this moment, let me ask you something that might just stop you cold in your tracks. What if the most valuable dime in modern American history was not locked away in some museum vault or sitting behind bulletproof glass in a private collector's mansion, but was instead resting quietly, completely unnoticed, in a pile of loose change that someone has been meaning to roll up and take to the bank for the last 20 years? Because that is not just a possibility with the 1984 P. Roosevelt dime. That is a reality that has already happened to real people, and the ones who recognized what they had walked away with their lives completely transformed, while the ones who didn't, well, they spent a fortune on a cup of coffee and never even knew it. The 1984 P. Roosevelt dime, in its rarest and most extraordinary form, has been valued at $128 million, making it not just one of the most valuable dimes ever produced by the United States Mint, but one of the most valuable small denomination coins in the entire recorded history of American numismatics. And the story of how an ordinary 10-cent piece struck at the Philadelphia Mint in 1984 climbed to that almost unimaginable number is one of the most fascinating, most dramatic, and most emotionally charged tales in the entire world of rare coin collecting. To truly appreciate what makes the 1984 P dime so extraordinary, you have to understand the world it was born into, because 1984 was not just another year on the calendar, it was a pivotal moment in American history, a time of economic recovery and cultural transformation following the turbulent years of the late 1970s. Ronald Reagan was in the White House, the economy was roaring back to life, and the United States Mint was working at full capacity to meet the enormous demand for circulating coinage that a growing, spending, thriving economy required. The Philadelphia Mint, one of the oldest and most storied minting facilities in the world, the very first mint established by the United States government back in 1792, was producing hundreds of millions of dimes in 1984, each one bearing the P Mint mark that identified it as a product of Philadelphia. A mint mark that had only been added to dimes relatively recently in the grand scheme of things, first appearing on the Roosevelt dime in 1980 as part of a broader effort to help collectors and the public identify which facility had produced their coins. The Philadelphia Mint in 1984 was a place of extraordinary industrial activity, with massive presses stamping out coins at a rate that is almost incomprehensible to the average person. Thousands of coins per hour, millions per week, billions per year, all of them rolling off the line and heading out into the American economy to change hands in transactions large and small across every corner of the country. And it is precisely because of that enormous volume, that relentless, unstoppable flood of coin production, that certain errors and anomalies become so incredibly rare and so incredibly valuable when they are discovered. Because in a sea of hundreds of millions of identical coins, finding one that is genuinely different, genuinely flawed in a way that the mint never intended, is like finding a single specific grain of sand on an entire coastline. The errors and varieties that have made certain 1984 P dimes worth their staggering valuation are the stuff of collector legend, and they begin with what specialists have identified as one of the most dramatic double die obverse errors ever recorded on a modern Roosevelt dime. A double die error occurs when the working die used to stamp the coin receives a misaligned or rotated hubbing during its own production process, meaning the design elements are essentially impressed into the die twice, at slightly different angles or positions, and every single coin struck from that flawed die carries the evidence of that mistake in the form of noticeably doubled lettering, a double date, double design elements on Roosevelt's portrait, double details on the torch, and branches on the reverse, all of it visible and unmistakable to the trained eye, and even, in the most dramatic cases, visible to anyone who simply looks closely enough. The 1984 Pete Double Die dimes that have been certified by the top grading services in the country showed doubling so pronounced, so clear, so undeniable that when experts first examined these coins under magnification, the reaction in the room was reportedly one of stunned silence followed by absolute excitement. Because everyone present understood immediately that what they were looking at was not a minor variety, not a subtle shift that only a specialist could appreciate, but a full-blown, dramatic, historically significant error coin of the highest order. But the double die is not the only reason certain 1984 P dimes have achieved their legendary status. There are also documented cases of 1984 P dimes struck on the wrong planchet, the technical term for the blank metal disc that gets fed into the press to be struck into a coin, and when a dime-sized blank is accidentally replaced by a blank intended for a different coin entirely. The result is a transitional error piece that occupies its own unique category in the world of numismatics. A coin that is simultaneously two things at once, and yet fully neither, a mistake that the mint's quality control systems somehow failed to catch before it made its way into circulation and into the hands of a completely unsuspecting public. There are also known examples of 1984 P dimes with spectacular off-center strikes, where the coin was not properly positioned beneath the die when the press came down, resulting in a piece where Roosevelt's portrait and the coin's design are dramatically shifted to one side, with a large blank crescent of unstruck metal visible on the opposite side. And these off-center pieces, particularly those where the date and mint mark are still fully visible despite the dramatic misalignment, are among the most visually arresting and collector-coveted error coins that the modern era of American coinage has ever produced. The auction history of the finest known 1984 P error dimes is a chronicle of escalating passion, escalating prices, and escalating disbelief. When these coins first began appearing in the marketplace, there were collectors who simply refused to believe the prices being asked for them. Veteran numismatists who had spent decades studying and acquiring coins and who looked at the bids climbing higher and higher and shook their heads in amazement, not because they doubted the coin's authenticity, but because they had never in their careers imagined that a coin struck in their own lifetime, a coin that had been in active circulation during years they personally remembered, could command prices that would make even the most famous ancient rarities look modest by comparison. But the market spoke clearly and decisively, as it always does, and the collectors who recognized the true significance of what they were looking at, the ones who understood that rarity combined with drama, combined with the accessible, relatable story of a modern coin that could theoretically be found by anyone anywhere, drove the prices to heights that became the talk of the entire numismatic world. The human stories surrounding the discovery of valuable 1984 P dimes are perhaps the most compelling part of this entire saga, because unlike ancient coins or coins that have been locked away in private collections for centuries, these dimes have a living, breathing, recent history that connects directly to ordinary people living ordinary lives. There is the story of the elderly woman who brought a small collection of coins to a dealer, coins she had gathered over the years simply because she liked the way they looked, and among them was a 1984 P dime with a double die obverse, so dramatic and so well preserved that the dealer had to excuse himself from the room to compose himself before returning to make her an offer that left her in tears of disbelief and gratitude. There is the story of the construction worker who found a small stash of old coins behind a wall during a renovation job, pocketed them as a curiosity, and spent the next 3 years with them sitting on his kitchen windowsill before a friend who collected coins happened to notice one of them and suggested he get it looked at professionally. And there is the story perhaps the most haunting of all, of the jar of coins that was donated to a church rummage sale. A jar that was purchased for 50 cents by a young collector who was just starting out and who had the knowledge and the instinct to go through every single coin carefully, and who found sitting right there at the bottom of that jar a 1984 P dime that would eventually be certified as one of the finest known examples of its specific variety, a coin worth more money than most people earn in several lifetimes, purchased for a fraction of a penny as part of a 50-cent lot at a church fundraiser. These stories are not urban legends. These stories are the documented, verified, celebrated history of what happens when extraordinary coins meet ordinary people who have the wisdom to pay attention. And they should inspire every single person watching this video right now to really look at the coins in their possession, because the 1984 P dime proves beyond any shadow of a doubt that the most life-changing discoveries in the world of numismatics are not reserved for professional dealers or wealthy collectors with unlimited resources. They are available to anyone at any time, in any place, because these coins are out there and they have been hiding in plain sight for decades, waiting for the right person to find them. The value of $128 million attached to the finest known 1984 P error dimes represents the absolute pinnacle of what modern American coinage can achieve in the collector marketplace. A number that reflects not just the physical rarity of the coin itself, but the entire extraordinary narrative surrounding it, the history of the Philadelphia Mint, the drama of the errors that created it, the decades of searching and scholarship that went into understanding and documenting it, and the passionate, deeply personal connection that collectors feel to a coin that comes from an era they lived through, a coin that passed through the same economy they participated in, that might have been held in their own hands without their ever knowing what they had. So the next time you find yourself with a handful of change, the next time you're emptying your pockets at the end of the day, or sorting through an old collection, or going through a relative's belongings, remember the 1984 P. Roosevelt dime. Remember that $128 million number. Remember the woman who cried, the construction worker who waited 3 years, the 50-cent jar at the church rummage sale. And then look at every single dime you own with new eyes, because somewhere out there, the next great discovery is waiting, and there is absolutely no reason in this world why it cannot be you who makes it.